Week 4 of the fantasy football season, and here's top 36 running backs. I'm ranking this week number 1, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. So week in, week out, Christian McCaffrey puts up huge numbers for this 49er team. He's one of the best running backs we've seen over the last 10 seasons. He could do it all, catch the ball out of the backfield, running between the tackles, and he pretty much is penciled in 20 to 25 points weekly. Number 2, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. So Bijan, I know last week wasn't a good ball game, only 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues, but this week I think he bounces back. This has a potential shootout written all over it, and we've seen it with these early London games throughout the seasons where they're high scoring and anything can happen, and we've seen the Falcons and Jaguars verse as well over there a few seasons ago. So I think Bijan gets back on track in this one. He's one of the more dynamic running backs in the league already in his rookie season, and this week I got him at 2. Number 3, Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. It looks like Saquon Barkley possibly could be back in this ball game here on Monday Night Football versus Seattle Seahawks, and Barkley's a great running back, no doubt about it. The Giants obviously missed him a ton in that ball game versus the Niners last week on Thursday Night Football, and this week here versus Seattle, I think he can make some plays. Seattle's run defense isn't all that great. We just saw Miles Sanders go for a good fantasy day, and as long as Barkley's on the field, even if the ankle's not 100%, he's still a huge ball game, no doubt about it. And like I said last week, the running back position, a lot of injuries, and a lot of guys have went down. So Barkley's still an elite running back, moving up the rankings weekly, it seems like, with a top guy almost going down every week. Next running back was staying in the same game, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of people coming into the year thought Zach Charbonnet was going to eat into a lot of the workload for Walker. I know Charbonnet had some carries last week, but a lot of garbage time as well in that ball game. So right here, Kenneth Walker's a dynamic running back. Home run hitting ability anytime on the field where he can break one for a big touchdown. And this week here versus the New York Giant team in New York, one of the worst defenses in the league against the run. We saw week 1, Tony Pollard have a huge game finding the end zone twice in that one. Week 2, James Conner, he had a solid ball game in that one. And then week 3, Christian McCaffrey did his thing. So this week here, Kenneth Walker has a big ball game, and I have high hopes for him, no doubt about it, this week, putting on a game. And number 4 and number 5, Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys. So Tony Pollard so far is the workhorse for this Cowboy team. He's looking solid over there with Rico Gatto coming in time for time, even though last week he did vulture a touchdown on a screen pass was Donald in that ball game. But Tony Pollard, good matchup versus the Patriots this week here. We saw at this Patriot team, their defense is bend don't break, but you could run on them. We saw Kenneth Gainwell week 1 have a solid ball game versus Patriot defense. Week 2, the Patriots defense got torched by Raheem Mostert. And this week here, Tony Pollard in a home game for the Cowboys. I think they get back on track offensively a little bit, and it starts with Tony Pollard because obviously Dak Prescott, he can't make the big plays down the field, and they got to rely on Pollard. And I think this week here he has a good one. Number 6, Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. So Derrick Henry, I know the numbers have dropped off a little bit and his snaps per game have dropped off, but that's a lot to do with game script as well, where Tajee Spears is obviously a betting receiving back, especially this part of his career, than Derrick Henry. But this week versus the Bengals, I think they could find some running lanes. I know Kyren Williams, he got shut down for the most part in that ball game for the Rams, but obviously Kyren Williams isn't the talent of running back like a Derrick Henry. So this week here, if they got a chance of winning this game, they got to rely on Henry is Tennessee. And this week I think they will, and they'll have a decent ball game versus Cincinnati at 6. Number 7, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Travis Etienne, he's an explosive running back, can catch the ball out of the backfield. A lot of people thought Tank Bigsby was going to eat into his workload as well coming into the season, but week 1 I know Bigsby did, but besides that we haven't seen much from him except a goal line touchdown in last week's game, only getting 1 carry. So Etienne can catch the ball out of the backfield, to run in between the tackles, and he's got a great matchup here versus the Atlanta Falcons, where there's a lot of holes on that defensive line, where I think he could find them and find the running room, because a lot of defenses, they're going to obviously roll their attention to Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, and Christian Kirk, and rightfully so. So I think Etienne in this one has a good ball game. Number 8, Josh Jacobs of the Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders, their offense is struggling besides Devontae Adams early in the season. And it looks like Jimmy Garoppolo might not give it a go, still in concussion protocol in this ball game. So Josh Jacobs, I know no training camp. He was off obviously to a slow start. Is Josh Jacobs in the early going this season, but he's still catching the ball out of the backfield. Starting to get things going. Last week he looked a little better on the run versus a tough defense in the Steelers. And this week he had a Charger team that really can't stop anyone defensively in terms of putting up yards and fantasy points. I think Jacobs could have a good ball game at the Chargers. And right now, this is a must-win pretty much for this Raider team at 1-2. Number 9, DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles. So DeAndre Swift, week 1, he didn't do anything in that ball game. But then weeks 2 and 3, he exploded with ball games over 100 yards. And this week, a good matchup versus the Washington Commanders. That their defense really don't stop anyone as well, where this could be a potential type of shootout between these NFC East rivals. But DeAndre Swift's taken the league by storm with Philadelphia over the last few weeks here. And he's the perfect running back that fits that system. Catch the football, running between the tackles, obviously. And the Lions just weren't using him in between the tackles a lot last season. But so far, first 2 out of 3 ball games, we've seen a lot from Swift. And what a good matchup with Washington coming to Philly. He has a good game in this one. Number 10, Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones, he missed the last 2 ball games, but he was warming up before that ball game on Sunday versus the Saints. And he looked pretty good. No issues with the hamstring. So this week, I expect him back tonight on Thursday Night Football. Division matchup, and he's got a great track record, obviously, career-wise, versus the Detroit Lions. So they obviously need the running game going over there in Green Bay. A.J. Dillon, he didn't do nothing in his 2 starts. And Aaron Jones, he'll be back, catches the ball out of the backfield, still running between the tackles. I expect at least 18-25 touch range in this one. And I got him at 10, number 11, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. I've been mentioning James Cook a lot. Last season, I was hoping for the breakout. But this year, the breakout is here for James Cook. A 3-down back, no doubt about it, catching the ball out of the backfield. Pretty good in pass protection. And a guy could run in between the tackles. And he's been perfect for this Buffalo Bill team. And that's what they've been hurting at the running back position. I know Singletary's been all right over the last few seasons, but I think James Cook is a way better back in terms of all those things than Devin Singletary. So this week in a potential shootout in the AFC East here with the Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills, I think James Cook has a good ball game, and I got him at 11 staying in the same game. Number 12, Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. So Mostert, I've been counting him out this season, saying he's going to get injured, saying these ball games are fluky, but so far he's gone out there and he's putting on the big performances. Him and Devin Achane definitely could be a lethal 1-2 combo like we saw last week. But right now, Raheem Mostert, he's top 5 in fantasy points at the position. So this week here at Buffalo, it's a tough matchup, no doubt about it. But this offense is so dynamic, putting up 70 points last week. And if they get Jalen Waddle back in the lineup, it opens things up even more for Mostert in the running game. So this week, even in a tough matchup, I'm just going off what we've seen so far this year. I got Mostert at 12, and running back's been a weak position for the most part with all these injuries. Number 13, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. So Ramondre Stevenson, a lot of people thought Zeke was going to take a lot of work from him, and I know Zeke last week had 16 carries in that game, but Stevenson's a receiving back out of the backfield. He's going to get the touches in between the tackles. And like I said, this week he could do damage, I think, with the Cowboys. Last week we saw Rondé Moore have a big run for 33 yards in that game, and James Conner have a huge game on the ground. So this week here, if the Patriots want to keep it close and pull this ball game out, they're going to run the football a whole lot. And that's a weakness in the Dallas Cowboy defense, is stopping the run. We saw it last season. We saw it last week as well. And this week, I think Stevenson in a close ball game that more people think has a good one. Number 14, Zach Moss of the Indianapolis Colts. So this Colt team, they're just giving Zach Moss pretty much every snap. They cut Deion Jackson. He went to the Browns practice squad, and Zach Moss is getting monster workloads. He played 56 out of 57 snaps in Week 2's ball game. And then last week versus the Ravens, 30 carries, which you rarely see anymore from a running back. So he's the exclusive back. I know Trey Sermon was in there on a few plays, but he's not going to have any impact. And the thing here with Zach Moss, we'll see if Jonathan Taylor does come back next week. Well, he's eligible off the IR. But if I'm this Indianapolis team, maybe you trade Jonathan Taylor away. He gets his contract he wants with another team, and you ride with Zach Moss, who's looked solid so far. And this week in a good matchup versus the Rams, who Joe Mixon just ran all over. I got him at 14. Number 15, Kyren Williams, staying in the same game of the Los Angeles Rams. So Kyren Williams, he's on the field pretty much every snap as well for this Ram team. I know Ronnie Rivers is the backup, but this Ram team has a lot of confidence in Williams as a 3-down back. They traded Cam Akers to the Vikings last week. Kyren Williams, he can run in between the tackles, good receiver out of the backfield, and he fits this offense with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay's schemes over there. So after coming off a pretty poor game, only 8.5 fantasy points, I think this week in Indianapolis, he gets things going once again in an indoor game, which is always a plus. And I got him at 15, 16, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs finally got a big workload last week versus a pretty weak Atlanta defense, and he just couldn't take advantage of it, only scoring 8.20 fantasy points. So right now, David Montgomery looks like he might be back in this Thursday Night Football game. And Jahmyr Gibbs weekly's going down the ranking board, unfortunately. I was big on him coming into the season. But right now, we're not seeing him in between the tackles break that big run, even though he's still got home run ability. And he's an elusive back, no doubt about it. But so far this season, he pretty much hasn't done anything with his best fantasy game being 12.5 fantasy points. So this week he has a number 2 running back option. I still think he could carve out that 8 to 12 fantasy point range, but definitely falling down the ranking board. But still running back a weak position. I got him at 16, 17, Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. I know Williams coming off the ACL injury. I know this Bronco team's been trailing in a lot of ball games this season, but Javonte Williams, I still think could go out there, make some plays, and a good matchup at a weak Chicago Bear defense. I think he has a good one in this one at 17, 18, James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. So definitely a tough matchup on paper at the San Francisco 49ers. But James Conner, so far this season, he's been a workhorse for this Arizona Cardinal team, and a guy finding the running lanes, a guy finding the end zone. We saw him last week at versus the Cowboys have a big game. And just some volume and potential work and potential touchdown ability this week. I got him at 18, number 19, Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's low on this list. Probably the most people here is Joe Mixon. But this Tennessee Titan defense shuts the run down, no doubt about it, where in the passing game's a different story, where I think T. Higgins and Jamar Chase have big games this week. But Joe Mixon last week, that touchdown pretty much saved his fantasy day. This week here, like I said, at Tennessee, no one really runs on him, and the game plan is to throw on Tennessee early and often. So this week, I think that's what Cincinnati's going to do, even though we know Burrow isn't 100%. Just the running lanes haven't been there this season versus the Titans defense. I got him at 19, number 20, Bijan Robinson of the Washington Commanders. So Bijan Robinson's been a solid running back so far this season. I know last week the numbers went down a little bit, but that was versus one of the elite defenses in the league, in the Buffalo Bills. But this week here versus the Philadelphia Eagles, I think he's going to have a decent ball game. I know obviously Rashad White came off a game where he didn't do nothing versus the Eagles, but this week here, I think Robinson's better in between the tackle runner anyway than White. White's more receiving back. And Antonio Gibson's pretty much been a non-factor for this Commander defense. So this week here, while he has a pretty tough matchup, but workload's still there, and this is a game where, Commanders are going to want to control the clock and keep that offense off the field for Philadelphia. I got him at 20, 21, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints, of the Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week here. And Alvin Kamara, after coming off the 3-game suspension, is back. And right now, I said bench him in my other video, but this running back position is so weak this season here with a lot of injuries and guys just not performing, that Alvin Kamara as the number 2 running back isn't the worst of choices. And right now, this week versus a Tampa team that just got shredded by DeAndre Swift on the ground, I think in this one, Kamara could carve out a decent ball game, but also I could see it going the other way where he hasn't played all season and they just shut the run down Tampa Bay and force Jameis Winston try to beat him if he starts in this game. Number 22, Myles Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. I know Myles Sanders, he really hasn't been that great of a back, but he's still getting workload. He's still finding the end zone twice so far in the first 3 games of the season here, and he's a running back that's getting the opportunity. So right now, he's a number 2 back, flex option for fantasy owners. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for Myles Sanders, but like I said, his ceiling's pretty much 12 fantasy points at most. But as a number 2 back, the way the running back position's been this season, I think fantasy owners would take it at this point. Number 23, Dameon Pierce of the Houston Texans. So far, Dameon Pierce, it hasn't been a great start here for Pierce. They've been more of a throw-first team, is this Houston Texan team. And obviously early in the season, struggling at 1-2 on the year, where they had to play catch-up in the first 2 ball games. And then last week, they still threw the football a whole lot to put the game on ice, was this Houston Texan team at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So right now, Dameon Pierce, it was good that he found the end zone last week. This week, a tough matchup, no doubt about it, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the better defenses in the league. But workload's still going to be there for Dameon Pierce. He's a running back that could definitely go out there and has home run ability as well. But this offensive line just has to block a little bit better for him. But this ball game definitely could be a script not in his favor, where they're trailing early and often, and they're going to have to throw the football 40 or 50 times. But right now, I got him at 23, 24, Rashad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Rashad White, it was a bad ball game for him versus the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 3. But right now, he's got a pretty decent matchup at the New Orleans Saints. Rashad White is a running back out of the backfield that could catch the football. Definitely could still do that and help fantasy owners in that aspect. Because if he's not running the football well, it's not like he's a one-dimensional running back. Because easily he could get 4 or 5 catches per game, I think, White here. Baker Mayfield, we know, likes to check it down at times to the running back. And pretty much in this offense, Rashad White, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans, the top 3 targets in the passing game, with obviously Evans being number 1 by a whole lot. But right now with a good matchup, indoor game in New Orleans, which always helped the division rival, I think White gets back on track after a bad ball game and a fumble loss last week. 25 Alexander Madison of the Minnesota Vikings. So Madison, he hasn't looked good so far this season, but last week definitely was encouraging for Madison versus the Los Angeles Chargers, where he had 17.5 fantasy points in that ball game, had 93 yards rushing, had a few catches as well in that game. And this week here, pretty good matchup at the Carolina Panthers, where their defense really hasn't stopped anyone. We just saw Seattle put up 37 points versus Panther defense. So right now, this offense, aimed offense, obviously over there in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, but Alexander Madison now with Cam Akers over there. You know he's not going to want to lose work, and maybe that'll motivate him to get things going even more. So after that trade last week, Madison did have a good ball game, like I mentioned. So this week at Carolina, a team that's not good versus the run, they really haven't stopped anyone. I think Madison is a flex option when number 2 running back is a decent play this week. 26, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. So I'm assuming David Montgomery is going to come back in this ball game. They gave him the 10 days rest. Now, Thursday night football game here tonight with the Green Bay Packers and a potential shootout. And Jahmyr Gibbs, so far, he hasn't shown that he could be the every down back. Last week, Gibbs had the every down role pretty much, and he only had 17 carries, 80 yards. So this week here, David Montgomery, he's going to get his 12, 15 touches minimum in this ball game. And they're going to try to keep this Green Bay offense off the field a little bit as well as Detroit. So right now, Montgomery's back in the mix. And a guy that I have this week at 26, 27, Jerome Ford, Cleveland Browns. So right now, Jerome Ford, first 2 games where he has an expanded role since Nick Chubb went down. He's played good football, but this week with a tough matchup. And last week where they didn't really run the football a whole lot. 10 carries, 19 yards, and a rushing touchdown Ford had. And he had a receiving touchdown as well, which saved his fantasy day, where he had 20 fantasy points. But right now, that was obviously fluky last week, where he had 12 touches in the ball game. Last week, he found the end zone twice in that one versus the Tennessee Titans. So this week with a tough matchup and a team using even Elijah Moore in the backfield, and Kareem Hunt, I believe, still going to get more work back there for this Cleveland Brown team. I don't see Ford with a high ceiling this week, and I got him at 27, 28, Devin A-Chain of the Miami Dolphins. So Devin A-Chain, what a ball game it was for him, and a game that no one saw coming, obviously. Salvin Ahmed, he was out in Week 3's ball game, and A-Chain was the backup back, but he fit into a big role into that ball game with 18 carries, 203 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns, and also added a couple grabs for 31 yards and 2 TDs. So A-Chain, what a monster ball game, obviously. Over 50 fantasy points in PPR leagues last week. And right now, I'm not saying he's going to go over there and split the load with Raheem Mostert. And also Jeff Wilson could be back sooner than later. But right now, he fits this offense like a glove, I believe, is Devin A-Chain. I know it's a very tough matchup at Buffalo, but his upside is better than the rest of the guys behind him on this list, especially what we saw last week, where they're definitely going to have to give this guy some work. After coming off a ball game like that where he had 230 yards from scrimmages, A-Chain, and 4 touchdowns, this Miami Dolphin team, they're going to have to find a way to get him in there. I know Raheem Mostert's having a solid season as well, but if A-Chain can continue to get work and put up some big plays and make some plays here, he's a running back that can move up the ranking board. I know other ranking boards he's higher, but right now I'm going to pump the brakes after that monster game. And like I said, Mostert's still there. If Mostert went down with injury, then forget it. This kid could be a top 10 running back. The 29 Breece Hall with the New York Jets, and the New York Jets, they really can't run the football this season. Zach Wilson can't stretch a defense out, and defenses are forcing Wilson to try to beat him. So right now, tough matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense has definitely improved this season. They're going to stack the box and make Wilson try to beat him. And after the last 2 weeks, we've seen Hall do nothing after week 1, where he had 10 carries, 127 yards. He's not going to do much in this ball game, I expect. And I got him in number 29, number 30, Isaiah Pacheco, staying in the same game of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Pacheco, we know he's a hard running back. Pacheco, we know he runs the football with a lot of power, a lot of speed, but this season numbers really haven't been there, and it's like a 3-man committee once again, with Edwards-Helaire getting some work last week, even I know some of it was in garbage time, and Jerick McKinnon the last couple weeks finding the end zone 3 times. So right now, with all those factors and a tough matchup at the New York Jets, he's pretty much a low-end 2 running back. Flex option, in my opinion, here is Isaiah Pacheco, and a guy where I don't think he's going to do much in this one with the Chiefs throwing a lot early and often. One Joshua Kelly of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Joshua Kelly, it looks like he might get another week here as the starting running back, but he's done nothing the last 2 weeks as a starter since Austin Eckler went out with injury. So right now, Joshua Kelly, he could run in between the tackles. We saw him have a good game in week 1, but this Charger team's a pass-first offense with Austin Eckler out of the lineup. And Kellen Moore, we know in his Dallas Cowboys days as the offensive coordinator, he likes pushing that football down the field. I know Mike Williams out for the season with a torn ACL, but they're still going to throw a whole lot. Kelly not really a receiver out of the backfield. So this week here is a low-end 2 option as well. Flex guy is Kelly at number 31. Number 32, Justice Hill of the Baltimore Ravens is healthy after he didn't play in week 3 with a foot injury. I think in week 4 he could be the starter and get a decent workload at the Cleveland Browns. I know a lot of injuries over the last few seasons in the backfield here for Baltimore, including Justice Hill obviously, but he's a running back they like a lot. Guy can catch the ball out of the backfield as well, which should help. And Lamar Jackson, he needs that consistent running game, and last week we didn't really see much of it. So right now, while Hill, as long as he could get healthy and make some plays, I think he could be a running back that can help owners this week is a low-end option, and he's number 32. 33, Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So on this list, I got Warren higher than Naji Harris, and I think Warren's the better running back in between the tackles. He's got more burst, he's got more speed, and he's also a guy in the open field that can make plays catching the football out of the backfield. We saw Harris have a nice workload in week 3 versus the Vegas Raiders, and he didn't do much in that ball game. It was just tough for him to even reach 60 yards. So right now, Naji Harris, I said before the season, Warren could have ate into the workload, and he was a running back that I thought would be a bust. And right now it's coming to fruition where Warren's starting to work in, and almost we're at a 50-50 split, I think, sooner than later. And this week in a pretty decent matchup at Houston, where they're middle of the pack defense so far, I think Warren could be a decent flex option, and I got him at 33. 34, Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. So this Bear team, their whole offense hasn't done anything in terms of fantasy football besides DJ Moore this season, but Khalil Herbert, he's not getting a lot of opportunities. Obviously, if the Bears were down early and often like they were last week, before you knew it was 21-0, the Chiefs were up in that ball game where they had to abandon the run and just throw the football, and they were made one-dimensional and didn't do anything. Because Khalil Herbert, I think, is a good running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got explosiveness, and this week maybe he can get back on track here if this is a close ball game, because both these teams are struggling mightily at 0-3 is the Denver Broncos and this Bear team. So right now, I think this Bear offense has to go back to basics, run the football a little bit more, and Khalil Herbert's more the running back than Roschon Johnson, who's the receiving back out of the backfield, and Deonta Foreman, he's been a non-factor this season. So right now, I think Herbert this week could be a little bit better than he was over the last few weeks here, and could be a close game versus a defense that just got shredded on the ground for 300 yards in Miami. 35, Naji Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Naji Harris, he's pretty much a player that isn't playable, but workload's still been there, and that's why he did crack this top 36 here at 35. So Harris last week, like I said, it took him a while to get to 60 yards. Pretty much out of all those 20-plus carries, he had one good run, was Harris. It looked like the explosiveness isn't there. He can't catch the ball out of the backfield more than a couple yards per grab. And Jaylen Warren's breathing down his neck and looks like the better running back, like I mentioned. So right now, even in a pretty decent matchup with the Houston Texans, I just can't trust Naji Harris in this ballgame because, like I said, I haven't seen enough out of him over the last season and a half. And he's definitely a running back that he's going down the rankings quickly. In the 36th and final running back on rankings, Jerick McKinnon of the Kansas City Chiefs. So McKinnon, obviously, they use him as a guy out of the backfield that's going to catch the football on third down and passing downs, and even at times line him up as a wide receiver. So if they want to spread this Jet defense out and tire their linebackers, I think they're going to use McKinnon more in this game plan as this Kansas City Chiefs team and have a decent ball game. I think McKinnon can do that versus this Jet team because we know the Jets pretty solid versus the run this season. McKinnon not really a running back, and I think the Chiefs, they're going to try to spread him in this game, throw the football all over the yard. And we know Patrick Mahomes, none of these receivers have really stepped up and played well here for this Chiefs team, besides Travis Kelce, obviously, who's the tight end on this roster. So right now, McKinnon's been getting work out of the backfield and finding the end zone the last couple ball games. So right now, He's a running back at 36 at the New York Jets, so that's the top 36 running backs I'm ranking for week 4 of the fantasy football season.